buy something, it's there with you as you go. Search engines operate based on the way we type words in. So we have to fit our search to fit the way that the search algorithm and the search engine function. And what you see here is some mixed behavior that we're starting to see out in the real world. So you see we're starting a search with Amazon, right? And we're looking for a specific item. But then they'll pop over to Google and they'll look for the same item. And people, consumers, people like us are starting to become very, very savvy about how they use these tools to find exactly what they want in the context of how they want it. Anybody here have Alexa at home? Anybody here have a Dash, right? So the notion of voice search is not one that's come into the fore. This is not new. From 2013, this is an article, an opinion article written in Wired magazine. And it talks about how graphical user interfaces don't work on phones, because no matter how good the phone interface is, your thumbs will never be smaller than they are. And we don't have time to wait for us to evolve down to have nice little small thumbs that we can use to look for things, right? We want to be able to talk to our devices. And this is something that is not new, but it has only now started to take hold. Well, actually, you've been using the interface of the future since the day you were born, when you first started talking to your mom and your dad. So talking is not new. It's the ability for the devices to listen. So what has to happen after the device listens? The device has to start to become smart. So now let's go back and start talking about filling in the form, okay? When you type something, you edit it as you go. When you have a typo, with the exception of when we're texting on our phones, when we're driving, and we should not be doing that, by the way. When you type in your phone, you edit what you're doing, right? But when you talk, you don't. You say something, it's out there, and then what you do after it builds on top of that. Now you can imagine the complexity of building a tool that is able to take your voice search and the context of what you're saying and deliver a meaningful result to a consumer. Never mind when we start getting into alternate reality. Augmented reality. I'm in alternate reality right now. Augmented reality. The idea is that when you have this much data that has to support what is, for us, a very basic interface, you're looking at a very, very big ask of the brands. And so the idea is that the future of search really becomes context. It's not enough to ask for something and have it match up with what's popular. It has to match up with what the consumer's looking for. You may have a consumer that's looking for a jogger, a trainer, and a running shoe. But in the context of this consumer, she's looking for 3 very different things because she happens to be from the UK. So you understand now what context is playing the part in search and the role of how this drives e-commerce and drives your businesses moving forward. And driving your business moving forward doesn't come cheaply. And this brings us to model innovation. I'm going to take a second. Making sense so far? All right. So, people ask me, what's like the proper mindset when you think about model innovation? And what I like to say is this. Your business is up and running. Everything's finally working perfectly. You have all kinds of startup pains and growing pains, and you've gotten through them. You've got the business moving to the next level, sales is working, and your hard work is finally paying off. It's time to blow it all up. It's time to take the whole structure out. Companies, when they make major changes, it tends to be paint and wallpaper. It tends to be something that they can do without disrupting the foundation of the business. But what we're going to talk about in this section is how you must disrupt the foundation of the business if you're going to survive. You've got to be willing to take the whole thing out. So, before we get to model innovation, let's talk about channel innovation. Because we've all heard about channel innovation as marketers, and it's an important distinction because one thing, unlike what the Fix taught us back in the 80s, one thing does not necessarily lead to another. So channel innovation centers on changing the way that we deliver a product to customers, right? Dash buttons, right? Push the button, Amazon sends it to you. Click and collect. The French. They've given us so many great things. Champagne, champagne, and click and collect. They actually invented this. I remember going to Carrefour like a dozen years ago, and they had click and collect. I was like, what the hell is this? And the Starbucks app. Who has a Starbucks app on their phone? I love all of it. The Starbucks app enables you to order what you want and pay for it through the app, walk in the store, grab it, no? Theoretically, right, let's face it. Or you order it, you walk in the store, you can pay when you get there. But the idea is that the app makes it a better experience for the consumer. But the app does not require Starbucks to change anything about their operations. You're placing an order, a barista is making your drink, you pick it up and go. So nothing has really changed except the way that you're placing the order. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Because when you talk about model innovation, you think, he showed us this picture of buildings being destroyed. It's not actually all that. Model innovation does not require new technologies. You do not need to create brand new markets to get there. You don't really even need to rely on a brand new product to get there. And we're going to talk about Jet.com right now. Now, here's the nice thing about it. Whenever I'm not in the US, I say, you guys ever heard of Jet.com? They go, no. Jet.com, as we all know, was purchased by Walmart very, very recently. Why were they purchased by Walmart? Well, Jet.com has this model where they show you a price for an item in the product detail page. But depending upon the choices that you as a consumer make in the purchase of that product, that price can go down. Okay, sounds fair enough. Why does this matter? Why was this worth $3.3 billion to Walmart? Because the expertise and the understanding of how a consumer operates to get there is everything. Walmart and Amazon are in a death match to get to the lowest price, and they algorithmically match each other. This system prevents anybody from being able to actually see what the lowest price is going to be until after the consumer sets the price, at which point the algorithm is irrelevant. Jet.com always wins. That's why Walmart paid $3.3 billion for that. So that's one example. Let's talk about another example. And this one happens to be near and dear to my heart because this was from my most recent employer, Kimberly-Clark. Back in World War I, Kimberly-Clark, this paper company, developed something called Cellucotton. And Cellucotton was a cotton bandage replacement. And it was able to be produced at a much higher rate, much faster, and much cheaper, considering they sent them to the front lines, and Red Cross nurses in France used them to help mend soldiers. And then they also realized, hey, this thing works really well for feminine hygiene. And so when the war was over, they came back and they created Kotex. Kimberly-Clark's first consumer product, Kimberly-Clark was only business to business before, their first consumer product was Kotex as a result of this. Let's take a sharp left turn. Mentos, the global candy company. We've heard about Mentos, but it wasn't because of the Foo Fighters video. It's because somebody realized if you take 2 Mentos and you stick them into a 2-liter bottle of Diet Pepsi, hilarity ensues. And this became one of the first viral videos. This became one of the ways that a global candy brand broke into the US market without any ad spend at all. Now let's get boring for a second. Barclays Bank, PNC, Bank of America, Chase, name your bank. You take a picture of the check. The bank really doesn't want that little piece of paper. They just want the numbers on the piece of paper. And they really don't want to see you if they don't have to because it costs them money for them to have somebody to look at you. So you just send us a picture. You don't have to come in. We don't have to come in. This works well for us. Okay? These are small little examples of model innovation that make a big, big difference because they deliver on a couple of things we'll talk about in a minute. Here's the big one. Remember Blockbuster Video? 9,000 outlets all across the US. The Blockbuster Video was beaten by our very good friends Netflix. Because Netflix realized, A, I don't want to go to that store and deal with somebody who's surly and have to look for parking. And B, in the 3rd year before Blockbuster went out of business, they collected $900 million of late fees. All right? Wall Street was like, this is awesome! But consumers were like, finger. Okay? And Netflix was like, no late fees. So Netflix has got this fantastic business. They're mailing out discs, they're making money, everybody's happy, and so what do? They introduced streaming. They torpedoed their own mail business by introducing streaming. by looking at the business and saying, male's not enough. I got too many people in the middle. And the notion of a middleman, by the way, spoiler alert, something's going to come up a little bit later. Got too many people in the middle. It may surprise you. It says right there, I've given it away. Netflix began streaming video before Apple introduced the first iPhone. So think about the amount of corporate courage it took to actually start to do that. And then were they done? No. They started creating their own content. And why did they do that? Did they become like, oh, I want to become a director? And they got this like a little beanie? No. They started creating their own content because they knew, I can't rely on Warner Brothers and Sony Entertainment and DreamWorks to give me content to distribute. Because they'll say, if he can stream it, I can stream it. So they had to protect themselves against their competition. And they did that. And that's the key to model innovation. With model innovation, first you defeat your competitor, and then you become your own new competitor. And that's how you approach model innovation. And so if there's 4 takeaways I want you to have from this, it's when you think about how you can model innovate your business, you have to align with what your consumers' behavior patterns are. When Blockbuster comes up with $900 million in late fees, that's not anything you should be happy about, even if you're a shareholder, because that says death knell. 2, you want to offer the consumers a behavior upgrade. Everybody wants a behavior upgrade. People deserve a behavior upgrade. 3, what is your value proposition? It has to be clear, and I'll explain what that is in a little bit. And 4, you have to foster and grow a culture of courage within your organization. So let's start with number 1. We're going to go to China now. We're going to talk about WeChat. Everybody here uses a messaging app of some kind, whether it's the messaging app that's native to iPhone or WhatsApp or whatever. Well, in Brazil, WhatsApp has a 90+% rate of penetration. 90+%. And that is not because WeChat is incredibly awesome. It's because the cost from the telcos to send the message was so prohibitively high that WeChat came around and was like, here, it costs you nothing, do it. In China, that's WhatsApp. That's WhatsApp. In China, WeChat has a similar amount of penetration. WeChat is something that people use on a constant basis. And so as a result of that, you look at how many people are using this, and you look at what else can they use this for? Well, why can't you use it to pay people? Why can't you use this payment that it is messaging app to make payments? So as a result, WeChat has over 200 million people with payment cards linked to their account. People spend almost 500 RMB per month, which is growing like mad. And third-party mobile payments are up to about $5.5 trillion per year. And what is this telling us? What's this telling us is that people are accustomed to a regular behavior pattern. And so what you want to do when you think about model innovation is you want to take a familiar behavior and turn it into a newly familiar behavior. You're already paying people, you're already using a chat app. Can we put them together? That's pretty significant model innovation. Secondly, you want to deliver a clear value proposition. And let me share with you a little shorthand that somebody shared with me when I was in London last week. A value proposition is nothing more than explaining the problem you're going to solve. If there's not a problem to solve, you don't have a value proposition. Okay? So the idea is that you want to deliver a clear value proposition. Well, let's talk about fashion. Clearly something I don't know a lot about without the help of my wife. Okay? We buy 10 t-shirts per year. They require about 70 gallons of water over the course of the year to make. We throw out an incredible amount of clothing in terms of raw poundage. We discard clothes very, very early, and there is an alternative where organic cotton tees make up a whole lot less waste, right? So there's a company called 4 Days, and 4 Days is a company that said, this is the problem. The problem is people love these basics, but they are very, very wasteful. So why don't we create a subscription where we're going to send you t-shirts on a monthly basis. You're going to send them back to us when you're done with them. I don't care what condition you're in, because we're just going to upcycle them into new content. And you can have 2 different tiers of membership. The idea is that the value proposition is you can still continue to live with your basics in a way that makes you comfortable without killing the environment. Kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? The idea, though, with that model is that they weren't just doing something to do something. There was a reason they were doing something. There was a value proposition. There was a problem they were solving. And then this gets into the notion of the culture of courage. Change for its own sake is a non-starter. Change is risky, okay? You don't want to introduce risk into a model. Your CEO, or if you are the CEO, your investors will not accept risk just for risk's sake. But the idea behind model innovation is it's not so much about change as it's about continuity. Because you have the continuity of wanting to maintain market share and the continuity of wanting to grow market share, okay? So, having said all that, let's look at what some of our captains of industry are saying, right? Most executives say they need to transform. Nobody says, I don't need to change. But they also expect their competition to stand still, which is delusional on a good day. The idea is this. You are repositioning aspects of your business to prevent somebody else from coming in and eating your lunch, similar to the way that Netflix did the Blockbuster. It's all about movies. It's just we do it a lot differently and make it a lot more relevant to the consumer. If you think about the notion of pivoting, you're not really moving, but you're totally changing direction. And this is a good way to think about how you model innovate parts of your business. And if you have to be able to be bold, and this is where the culture of courage comes in, because if you wait for someone else to do something, you're dead in the water. Because at the end of the day, what you want to do as a company is appeal to all of these people. You want to keep them in your gravitational pull. You want to keep them looking toward you and thinking about you. You know, people used to say, brands want to be your friends. People don't want brands to be their friends. But they want the companies that they interact with to be meaningful and relevant to them. And this brings us to blockchain and the notion of this central sort of warm, gaseous orb that nobody really wants to go near, and nobody really understands, being this huge gravitational force in each of our businesses, right? But the real question you have to ask is, what the hell is blockchain anyway? So, like everything else, blockchain is completely overhyped. The idea is that once there's something to jump on that is sort of uncertain but kind of cool and sort of has some mystery to it, and the Winklevoss brothers, I don't even know what the hell their names are involved, we all like, oh, this is fantastic, right? And then we think about the tech stack, and we don't want to talk about the tech stack because it's not relevant to this conversation at all. But here's where we're focusing. For you as a business owner, for you as a marketer, as a retailer, as a brand, and as a consumer, what does blockchain mean for you? And so what we want to do is cover off on some aspects of this that will be meaningful for your day-to-day life, right? We all know it's massively impactful across pretty much every business, and we can show all work on that. We also know that it introduces a significant amount of disruption into every business. And so it's with this disruption in mind, we're going to talk about the first one, which is the elimination of the middleman. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier, to talk about the elimination of the middleman, right? The USPS is becoming a little bit of a drag on Netflix's operations, so they got rid of it. Right? Now, that has nothing to do with blockchain, but notionally we're aligned. So when you think about going to the store, you kind of have your sort of regular players, right? You've got a retailer, you got your brand, the manufacturer, whoever supplies the product, you've got your payment system. And each of these are a part of a middleman. Each of these play a separate role that doesn't really impact notionally what you're doing. You go to the store, you buy it, and you leave. But as I'm looking out at the audience, I'm thinking, none of you own chickens, right? But at some point, you might want to have eggs, or you might want to have chicken breast fillet. Then you've got to go to somebody who has chickens, or at least will lay eggs for you, and have that person send those chickens to a retailer. And then you want to go to the retailer and pay for them, so you whip out your card, and then the card owner comes after you to get you to pay them. Or you say, you know what, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to use cash. And I need the government to back that cash up so that it's useful to the next person. By the way, this is Alexander Hamilton, but I probably should have used this instead. Okay. So here's the idea. Blockchain is not really about what you buy. It's about how you buy. And this is the value of blockchain within the context of this gathering here. Because it can work in a B2B or a B2C context. So much about shopping is really concealed. It conceals like nothing. There's so many actors happening when you go to the store to buy something. And all of them are there, and they're all part of what we call the value chain, but it's really the cost chain. And this information is not made available to you because it does not suit the middleman to do so, right? And that may sound conspiratorial, it may sound paranoid, it may even sound anarchist. But the fact of the matter is, we have to get to a level of transparency in our exchange of goods in the retail and the shopping environment for e-commerce to really take off. And so blockchain's role in e-commerce is to introduce this transparency and to enable an undistorted level of capability and level of performance in a marketplace. And we call it peer-to-peer commerce. Now, when you think about peer-to-peer commerce, you may be thinking about eBay. And eBay is really somewhere where a buyer and a seller can get together. They've made a marketplace. When you think about, though, what you're buying on eBay, the seller has to discount what the item is worth to a sufficient degree that you feel comfortable that you can trust them. Trust plays such a big part of this kind of a marketplace, which brings us to trust, transparency, and pricing. So we're going to pick on eBay for a little bit because they're big. Now, eBay's a great company. We love eBay. Genuinely love eBay. They're a big company. And so, but eBay finds itself in a conundrum where we're going to start selling higher-end items that nobody can vouch, say, for their authenticity. So eBay puts together a third-party capability that says, we're going to check the value of all of this, and do it with watches, and we're going to charge you for it, we're going to charge the seller for it, but then this should overall lift the total value of the items being sold, right? And we're just doing this because consumers are asking to. We're not doing this because we're being particularly nice, right? So you might say, well, eBay's sort of being a little bit of a shark about this. They're adding additional cost into the translation, into the transaction to pay for authenticity.